But I can't remember anybody getting booed.
What about guys with such great success? And I'm thinking Blackmer, I'm thinking even Bobby, just they won a lot. And the reality is, when you win a lot, that means a lot of people are losing a lot. I'm just curious whether the fans, you'd like to see a winner, but you'd like to see other people win as well.
Well, yeah, that's true. But I still can't recall anybody getting booed. Yeah. And I'm the last one probably is going to boo anybody. Might be people you don't care for, but kind of disrespectful to sit there and boo people.
What made you go back to the track week after week after week, year after year after year? What was drawing you there, Ryan?
I think the excitement of the speed, the noise.
Yeah.
And of course you had maybe, I guess, favorite drivers. I wouldn't say favorite driver, but favorite drivers. And it was the excitement.
Name those favorite drivers. Who would be some of the guys couldn't wait to see succeed?
Well, there'd be Bobby Snars and Squirt John. I suppose Squirt Johns was one of my favorites. He was probably the favorite. And of course, all the rest of them, Kenny Shearer. Always liked Kenny Shearer. Always did.
How about flagmen? Talk about the flagmen that you remember.
Oh, some of those guys, it was like this guy on the screen here a while ago, standing out in the middle of the track.
I saw that.
Oh, God almighty.
How about that?
I can remember Marv used to do that, stand out in the track and wave the flag, and oh my gosh. And then it got, there was another one who was pretty classy at it, and was it Whitey Gorsuch? Was that the guy? It was.
I'm thinking you're
pretty classy.
Jim Ponder?
Jim Ponder was one, yeah. And then what was it? Ed Nelson, he finally got clipped, I guess, didn't he? And that's when they stopped going out in the track. I mean, it's kind of hard to outrun one of those cars.
What else with just the logistics of the track itself? You had tow trucks, for example. Was there on the ready in the infield a series of tow trucks and ambulances that would be set up? I'm trying to think of the layout of the auxiliary people.
Well, back to starting, there was no ambulance.
Right.
I think they used somebody's station wagon.
Mm-hmm.
And there was no fire truck, probably one fire extinguisher. And wreckers? Can't remember. Guess I didn't go to watch the wreckers. I must have went and watch a water truck, maybe.
Good answer. That's why we're asking a dumb question. I don't remember seeing. I assume when the cars got disabled, that they just sort of push them. I don't know that they. I'm just trying to visualize them.
Well, you talk about. There was times when a car rolled over, they rolled the thing back over on its wheels, and the guy took off. Never got out of the car. I've seen that happen different times.
Did you ever see a bad wreck where you thought the guy might have been hurt badly?
I don't remember seeing a bad wreck in the first 25 years that I can recall. I can remember a couple bad ones after that. But
were you there the night Eddie Kisco got flipped over and his cage sort of got crushed? Remember that?
Don't remember that.
Okay. Which is a credit, I guess, to the track and the drivers, that there were not that many. I mean, everybody kind of remembers one or two, but over that time span, there weren't a lot of them.
Well, I remember back, I would guess this would be about the early 60s, middle 60s, or in the 60s probably. And I think all racetracks go through phases of the crowd dwindles, the car count dwindles. And if it hadn't have been for Sharkey and this Mobilia out of Erie, they would have had very few cars. Because I think at one time, one of them was fielding 5 cars.
This was Joe Mobilia, is that the guy?
Was it Joe? Yeah. And what was Sharkey's name? I can't remember.
Joe.
Joe Sharkey?
I think so.
Maybe. Didn't one of them have one arm missing?
Mobilia.
But I can remember they fielded quite a few cars there for a year or two.
Then what, did you get a sense that, the documentary sort of deals with the late models, but in order to get an increase in the number of cars in the field, initially when they were starting with, they had 15, 18 cars, ultimately they had money more. How did that happen? How did they encourage that? Was that part of having an increased purse or interest? Do you remember?
I don't remember.
Yeah.
Don't remember.
Do you remember any special events that Leonard and the boys had to try to spice up the crowds?
I don't remember what year it was, whether it was the first 25 years or not, when they brought in the Outlaws one year. And that was a long time ago. That was before the Outlaws that we know today. And
I was thinking more like Joey Chitwood.
Joey Chitwood was there different times.
Motorcycle races, extra stuff other than stock car racing.
There was motorcycle races. I went to those.
Did you?
Oh my God, that's about like watching a tennis match. You know, 2 or 3 motorcycles out there, that's just a lot of fun, isn't it? I mean, these guys were crazy, but it was just no fun to me. And then they brought in the 3/4 midgets.
3/4.
And they put on a decent show if you got the feature. You know, the heat races, there wasn't a lot of them in. And if it got spread out a little, that was about like the motorcycle races. But it always amazed me about the motors they had. They probably announced it at the time, but some way or other, I've got it in my mind that they had terrifically high compression. And why I've got it in my mind, but they said they used to weld the heads right to the block because the compression was so high. Some of them had Ferguson tractor engines in them.
Wow.
And I think they were there several times, or 2 or 3.
Were you there the night they had the team race?
I was.
Where? What was that like?
It was hard to keep track of.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. I had forgotten about that team race. That was Did they do that twice?
They did it in '56, and then later they did it over to Erie a few times.
Okay.
But they did the very first year they did it at Stateline, right at the end of the season.
Mm-hmm. But I don't recall who won.
Yeah. Sonner and Lamancuso.
Oh, was it?
So literally it would be like a tag team. I'm thinking of like wrestling. You know, the guy goes into the pits and the other guy comes out.
I assume that's the way it was, yeah.
So we're up there.
Mm-hmm. And I think they had quite a field of cars, if I remember right.
Do you recall certain nights where the field was so huge? You know, 60, 70 cars.
Those old jalopy races.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm. That's the one that Shagla had that 54 in. Of course, my parents, they were pretty smart. They wouldn't let my brother and I drive.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, we had Frank Liffner drive one time. I think that's the time we made, came in the top 10, and I think we made $40. Oh, man, we got enough to change the oil again. And, oh, so who else drove? Oh, a guy by the name of John Taylor. He drove one time. Well, then we decided we was going to have a 2-car team, so we bought an old Chevy Coupe from this woman in Sugar Grove. Of course, you know, he tear all the junk out of the interior out, puts roll bars in it. Of course, didn't have enough money to do anything to the motor. So Marv drove it. Well, Bob Hallett was still alive, and he had a car in it. Run right into Marv. I mean, just nailed him. Marv says he could have knocked me right through the windshield if I hadn't had the seatbelt on. And he said, so he says, I just laid back and waited for him to come around again. And he says, I see him up beside me, and I rammed right into him, and I hollered over, take that, fat ass. I'll never, pretty quick, the car kept slowing down and slowing down. All of a sudden, there was a kaboom, a bunch of smoke come out. They pushed the thing in the pit. And of course, just had one of those old 235 Chevy 6-cylinders in it. And it blew the fuel pump right off of one side of the block and the generator off the other side. You could stick your whole arm right straight through it. You know, it just blew both sides of it out. That was the end of that car. Didn't even make one night.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. But boy, they used to get a ton of cars in there.
Mm-hmm.
And then here'd come Tom Dill. And just spank everybody, you know. I mean, he had a Ford coupe, or maybe it was even an old Mercury coupe. Oh my gosh. Just, he wasn't getting in wrecks like everybody else, you know. Just run right around that track just like he'd been there forever.
Terrific. What's your most vivid memory of Stateline? When you close your eyes or let's think back of something that was really stands out on your first few years of going to Stateline as a 14-year-old, and you and your brother. What would you say?
Well, I think the most vivid memory is the first time we went there and couldn't see the cars on the other side of the track. Mm-hmm. And the track was big compared to, you know, we used to go to that little bull ring and see the roof, and that was it. And then, of course, never drank at the races. I used to like to have a little drink once in a while, but never drank at the races. I seen all these other people go up there and drink, and they never seen the races. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were too buzzed to see the races. I don't even know what they paid for. They pay a cover charge to go in there to get drunk, I guess. But never drank at the races. Oh.
What did you think of their French fries? That's what I want to know.
Oh, that's where I learned to put vinegar on my French fries.
Me too. Me too.
That's comical too, you know, because it wasn't too long ago we were out to eat with this couple, not where we were at. He and I both got French fries, and they said, he says to the waitress, he says, "You got any vinegar?" I thought, what the heck's he want vinegar for? And he starts putting it on his French fries, and boy, the light bulb went off. I said, oh my gosh, I haven't done that in years. He says, well, didn't you learn that at Stateline? I said, that's right where I learned it. Vinegar on my French fries. Yeah. And you know, a little side note about those French fries, those were real potatoes back then. When the fire department, Sugar Grove Fire Department had a concession stand, Saturday mornings, there was a crew in the fire hall peeling potatoes. Of course, they had a peeler, you know, and dicing potatoes. Put a potato in there and push the handle ahead. Oh, hundreds of pounds of potatoes. And there was a fella and his wife went up to the Stateline every Saturday and fried the French fries ahead of time. Wow. And then they just dump them in the fryers during the races, you know, for 5 minutes or less, and they were all set. I mean, those were real potatoes. Yeah, vinegar on the French fries.
Well, and you put it in you had a paper cone. You know, you put them in, and you pour the vinegar, and it's just pile up on the bottom. And you kept. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
And get a bottle of pop out of the old livestock watering tank.
Yeah.
Filled with ice. Yeah.
Who was telling the story about that livestock tank, and the drivers would use one of them? I'm sure it was in the pit area.
Don told you that.
Yeah. Don Frank was telling this story that they had, hamburgers and hot dogs and beer and stuff like this, and one of the guys, it may have been Jim Polaro, stayed around at 4 o'clock in the morning, decided he needed to wake up, so he just simply dove right into the ice-filled, because they were big.
Yeah,
They treated it as
they
a
were
bathtub. He had to sober up.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, oh my God, what a story, what a vision.
Because they brought blocks of ice from Jamestown, the big blocks. Because I remember going over different times with some of the guys and getting the ice. Of course, then got to be when I was 18 years old, and my brother too. And we would, it was supposed to be our turn to work, was probably be every third week or every fourth week or something like that. Oh, God, I hated working up there because you missed the races. Well, we work a little while and then we'd disappear. We'd be sitting up in the stand. Pretty quick, we'd see this one fireman walking down front and he's looking for help. And we just keep going down the seat farther and farther. He never did find us. But I hated working up there. Just hated it. I went to the races. That's a racetrack. You could go to watch the races, not dip pop.
What was it? Were there some of the, because you obviously were dealing with the pit crews and the racers, that's your location. Were there certain people that were really colorful personalities?
Well, see, I never worked in that pit stand other than help setting it up.
I see.
So, but they used to tell about some guy, and I can't recall who it was, would come over to get a hot dog, and he'd want the blackest one you could possibly find, you know. And the guy looked down, and there was one that had fell down in back of the grill, and it was all greased and everything. He says, "How's that one?" He says, "That's perfect." Slapped it in a bun. That guy went off just tickled to death. You know, oh, ugliest looking hot dog you ever seen in your life, probably.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, on Friday.
Well, this year, Ron, in 2010 is going to be the 55th year since there's been racing up at Stateline. Why do you think that racing at Stateline has lasted for 55 years when most other tracks around here have long been shut down?
I think it all goes back to the original owners. That got a fan base, got a car base. That's what I think it goes back to, and it's just continued on. And of course, Franny has paid some decent purses too, and he's been decent to the fans. I mean, his admission prices. Look at 99% of the other tracks. His admission prices, it's unacceptable to them. I mean, maybe people have issues with Franny, but I mean, he's treated the fans pretty good.
Well, it has, and the 55th anniversary is going to be commemorated by Randy Anderson, putting together the ultimate documentary on Stateline Speedway, the first 10 years, and you're going to be part of it. Mark your calendar. The last weekend, last Sunday in September, we're going to have the grand opening, world premiere, Klieg lights. We'll have all that stuff. Celebrities, you'll be there.
Yeah.
I'm serious. This is Randy's job here. My job is just really to get this on film for him. But this has been terrific. What's the question we forgot to ask you?
What did you think we were going to ask you that we didn't?
Well, I'm really surprised about the French fries and vinegar. I'll tell you that.
You're talking my language. I remember that.
Well, you know.
It's funny, Don Frank talked about that too. You know, it's just.
You know, there's no doubt a ton of people behind the scenes from the original owners that people never heard of. For instance, Leonard's mother. I mean, she was kind of the secretary and did all the paperwork. She sat there in that office in that garage they had in Sugar Grove many days. I know her car would be sitting there. And the Frank boys' dad and their brother, Gail, I mean, he was there a lot. Saturday nights directing traffic. I mean, they parked cars in the parking lot then.
Yeah.
And they directed traffic getting out of there. You know, that's like committing suicide.
I remember that, yeah.
Jeez. But I almost think the parking lot was better shape then than it is now, or the last time I was there anyway. Some of those big rocks, they'd been there for several years. But yeah, it was a good time, good part of my life. And you know, it's some awful good memories from going to the races. I guess that's where I met my wife.
You met her at the races?
Yeah,
You didn't tell us that part of it.
Well, I don't advertise that. No, she's a good wife.
Yeah.
As long as she doesn't go home with a dog.
Or a horse.
Oh, God.
Well, this has been great. Thank you so much for letting us interrupt your Saturday afternoon.
Well, you're perfectly welcome.
What we'd said,
you were here.
Ron, was, we've been interviewing a lot of drivers and we hit the owners, but, we didn't hit a fan.
I'll tell you
Because
another.
that track wouldn't have lasted without the fans.
Oh, absolutely.
And you're the representative of all those fans.
You know, I can remember Don Frank used to carry planks and cement blocks down front and put another row of seats down front. Because they'd have such huge crowds. Of course, maybe they didn't have quite the seating capacity they have now, but I mean, they packed the place. And he used to carry cement blocks and planks down. People would be sitting on the restroom roofs. And Don told me just a few years ago, 10, 12 years ago or whenever it was, seen him one night and I says, boy, not much of a crowd, is there, Don? Of course, he wasn't the owner then. No, he says, you know how I could tell the crowds? He says, if I walked in back the bleachers and looked through toward the track, if I couldn't see the track, he says, I thought we were in good shape because there was a lot of legs hanging.
That's good.
And he says, I used to get so ticked off at those people up on that restroom roofs. He says, it'd make me so goddamn mad because I'd have to fix the roof. And he said, now I wish we had people to sit up there. Yeah. But they go through, all racetracks go through those phases, I'm sure.
You're the best. This is great.
It was a good time of my life.
Well, we could see that, and though you're lit right up.
You have a lot of enthusiasm.
Really was.
Ron.
I'd do it again in a heartbeat.